everybody to, I always say welcome back. I don't know why I say welcome back, because it might be your first time here. So welcome to Wrestling Travels Lockdown Sessions, presented to you, as always, from our great friends at Wrestle Merch Central, Europe's biggest hub of all things professional wrestling. Please check them out at WrestleMerchCentral.com. But please check out my guest today. I'm very excited to welcome Big Guns Joe to the show. Joe, welcome.
Hey man, thanks for having me on.
Loving it. I love, even though we're a UK brand, I'm the only guy in the US, so it's always a good time to chat and get to know people on the UK wrestling scene, and hopefully awesome, introduce them to more people over here in the States and abroad where we listen. So a good place to start is at the beginning, I have always heard. So tell me, how long have you been in the business, Joe?
It's probably looking at around, say, I was 19 when I kind of initially started training. Before I became the biggest henchiest guy in British wrestling today. I should add that, No, but as I say, I was 19, I think it was around 2013 when I started training, and then when I was officially started, getting myself out there was probably around 2015, 2016. So not massively long, but long enough to have kind of got myself in there and get my name about and hit the ground running almost.
Good. Who broke in? Who did you break in with? Who did you train?
So I've trained a load of places, especially when it came before lockdown happened, and me and a lot of the Northwest guys would just try and go everywhere. But because especially with the Northwest scene, there's a lot of amazing places to train. But I started at Grand Pro Wrestling under Johnny Brannigan. Sam Gradwell, NXT UK superstar, he's a graduate from there. But yeah, I started there. I trained there for a number of years. I started to filter out to say Future Shot School under Sam Bailey, Wrestle Pro, which has had a numerous trainers. Sam Bailey was also a trainer there. Sam Gradwell's also been a trainer there as well. Fighting Spirit was a place I went with, especially over the past couple of years as well. Zach Gibson, James Drake, I'm sure everyone knows who they are. Yeah. That was phenomenal, amazing people to work, learn from. And yeah, and then NGW, so you had Nathan Cruz, Matt Myers, people who know through the seat, kind of the still in the Northwest, but that's kind of heading towards Leeds way, but yeah, I've had trying to get everywhere as possible. And then, I'm very fortunate to have people Tyson Tebow and Ashton Smith, Martin Kirby, Joey Hayes. I say, we were saying beforehand, you could list so many people off. Very fortunate to have kind of connections with those people, be it if it's training or if it's just kind of talking to and getting ideas from. Chris Sharp as well has been a huge influence. Chris Ridgway, those two guys, I'm really close with. Over the past couple of years have been hugely kind of some two people that have really helped kind of further my career as well, and just being really close with and good friends with in general. So it's a long-winded answer. Yes, Grand Pro Wrestling is where I started, and that's kind of in the journey so far.
It's a great answer, because a lot of people that may be watching this and don't realize that you start off somewhere, but in professional wrestling, and I'm sure a lot of other sports too, but really in pro wrestling, it is a journey, and it's a continuous learning journey, and you'll never stop picking stuff up.
Definitely not.
Yeah,
definitely not. And it's as I say, I probably missed loads of people off who have kind of met on this journey, and they've helped me in a certain way, or be it in various different aspects of my career. But yeah, I'm still excited to keep going and see who else I bump into, and who what happens when everything kind of goes back to normal. So yeah,
it's one of those things too that I always say, we really lift each other up in this sport.
100% agree.
And 10 different people could tell you the same thing, the same little piece of advice, but that 11th person puts a little bit of a different spin on a word, or says something, and it just clicks.
Bam,
and then you're like, bam, okay, I'm working on this, and I always say, when I watch people, I've been lucky enough to have been invited now into some training. Actually, I kind of weaseled my way into a training school in Toronto or Montreal,
cool.
actually, in 2019. Got to watch everybody train, and it was all in French. And I'm like, man.
Wow.
And I'm telling Lee McAteer, our founder, he was there with me. We were doing a tour, and I go, I can understand everything that is being talked about, but I don't speak French. I can just, it was just one of those eye-opening things to me, because it brought me back to, 20
It's a universal language, isn't it?
It is. And whoever came up with it, I always say, people don't understand it. I don't want to privately, I could tell you my thoughts on this, but publicly, I still try to protect the business. But, the one thing I always say is I always watch everybody's feet. I watch the footwork. And one of the guys, when I was at this guest at their training center, were asking me obviously some of them spoke English. Most of them were bilingual. But I said, man, once you can get your feet moving, I go, watch your trainer. Your trainer has taken so many less steps to get to where he needs to be. There's no stutter step in their feet. But I go, once you can get your feet to get you where you go, and you don't have to think about that anymore, then you can start concentrating on what you're doing and what's next. To me, that was such a big deal, because otherwise I'm thinking of, I got to get my feet here. I'm doing this move. What's coming up next? Where am I turning? Where am I looking? And then bam. But once I can get one part, especially that, if you can get your feet work down, footwork, not feet work, we're live. You get your footwork down, it's awesome. So let me, let's back up even further. When you're growing up, who was the first one you kind of see on TV that your introduction to pro wrestling that makes you start going, hey, I like this. I want to do this.
Well, it was kind of weird, because I used to have a few friends like on my street that kind of would talk about wrestling. This is like way before, I was probably like 6 or 7. And then like we'd kind of all be in like the front garden and stuff, and they could be like, well, I'll be Stone Cold Steve Austin, I'll be The Rock. And then they said to me like, oh, you can be the Big Show. And I was like, who's the Big Show? But obviously, one of the largest athlete in the whole of sports entertainment and professional wrestling. But at the time I was like, who's that? So then I kind of was flicking through, obviously watching things on a Saturday morning. I'd run back from my swimming lesson to catch SmackDown on like 2000 and 2004. And so I started watching it from there. And the SmackDown 6, like Eddie Guerrero, Edge, Rey Mysterio, Chavo, those guys would with the kind of the guys that had come out and put on these crazy kind of like fast-paced matches. And as a kid, it was like, whoa, what is this? If you know what I mean. And then you add the storylines on top of that, and I was just hooked from then on. And then it's been the same ever since, really. So and then obviously I started to watch Raw, and then you start to watch the pay-per-views. I remember I was begging to go over to my nan's house so I could watch WrestleMania 20, and then I got it on VHS. I recorded it on VHS, got one of those, and then took it back, and then I'd always go to watch it at home. But yeah, like that's kind of the initial memories that are kind of like trickling down at the moment. But as I say, if it wasn't for those kind of 6 guys to start with, they were the kind of the boom that happened in my head to be like, whoa, this is amazing. But like I've always been a big fan of, like, say, Big Show. I've always been a big fan of Chris Jericho. These kind of guys that are kind of like larger than life kind of characters, be it the way they look, how they do promos, things like that, was just so captivating as a kid. And then, I've never grown up. So we all have, we all haven't. So
I'm going to ask you a question that I've never asked anybody, but it just kind of came to me as you were talking, and I'm surprised I didn't ask anybody. But as somebody growing up in the UK, and I'll ask this, who did you watch? And everybody's talking about the WWE, and I watched WrestleMania. And do you guys ever take any shit now when you go into training, catching back up on the British wrestling scene?
As in, like, you mean like World of Sport and things like that?
Yeah, the World of Sport. Do you got when you guys start training? Are people like, hey, you got to go back and check this stuff out? So is that a whole new world for you guys?
100%. I mean, like, it's always great to kind of, we've got the kind of the people that, you've got Johnny Sade, Marty Jones, that just name a couple of people who are kind of still at the forefront of, of importance in British wrestling. But yeah, definitely. I mean, especially when, like, I was very character driven, and I still am, but, I want to be able to learn the kind of different styles, things like that. And, being a British independent wrestler, you want to be able to kind of, have the kind of edge to you that people can, be like, no, that is British wrestling. So, I mean, I remember getting a DVD of like A to Z of World of Sport when I was younger. And I watched that, and it was almost mind blowing because it was completely different. The games as well, if you remember, like Legends of Wrestling, games, like there was like, you could be Hulk Hogan, but then you could also be Giant Haystacks. And then when I know this is going off track, but when I initially watched WCW, like when I went back and watched little bits and saw him, join the Dungeon of Doom as Loch Ness, I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Like someone who was so like, especially like Big Daddy Giant Haystacks, who was so like kind of solidified with British wrestling, even kind of going anywhere near American, and mainstream wrestling was crazy. But no, I mean, I think it's so important to look back and continuously look back, just even if it's for like little bits of, little bits tag team matches, or just how those matches were. But then you've got the likes of, like, British Bulldog started there, Win Eagle, Finlay, Robbie Brookside, there's all these people that are present within professional wrestling at the moment that, you've got no choice but to look back and be like, wow, this, it's just a plethora of just amazing. There's so many years before my time, you got decades and decades worth of stuff you can watch and learn from. So, if you're not doing it, then, you should. So
100%. And then over here now, we have switched over from WWE Network to the Peacock Network. And I cannot tell you how disappointed I am in that, because there's barely anything that has been transferred over. They say it'll all be transferred over, but I love going back and just watching, documentaries are cool, but watching just the actual in-ring action is awesome to me. And a lot of that older stuff is not available. But I've talked with people, like, you've obviously noticed it going back and watching it. A lot of moves that used to be back in the day, they're like lost, like hidden moves that I always feel like somebody could come back as like the 80s kid and have a whole move set that's totally different than what's going, and what's old is new again. And I think that could be popular.
Definitely. I mean, I think it kind of can set you apart from, the kind of just adding these extra little bits. But then you going back to what you're saying about footwork, like you look at their footwork and you look at their pacing, there's so much, you can dissect from these different matches and different wrestlers, that you can almost, as you said, like old is new, that you can kind of almost like take from that and then put into the limelight, and people are like, whoa, I've never seen that before. But when really you've got all these amazing talent from years gone by, that that you've gone, no, well, no, this is just them shining through almost, if you get what I mean. But no, like, honestly, like, it's especially when training with like the likes of Zach Gibson and James Drake, that was a kind of a big thing for them, that they would say to kind of make sure you watch this, learn from this. And they were completely right. And you kind of almost kind of slap yourself on the wrist to be like, well, first of all, it's my heritage, why wouldn't I watch it? And second of all, I've wasted so much time not watching. So
yeah, that's why I thought of that question, because I'm like, there's so many people that I've talked to, especially across the pond, and who got you into it, and they're like, oh, Stone Cold, or I watched John Cena. Or some people, surprisingly, when I ask them, they'd never watched wrestling, they had gotten into it by playing Raw versus SmackDown on PlayStation 2. And I'm like, well, to me, that's crazy, but that's cool,
It's different. It is awesome, man. Like, to have like so many different backgrounds, and that's what I love about wrestling as well. Is that I've got, the best thing is that people, and you've got friends from so many different locations across the world, or even in like the UK. You've got, if you go to a show, kind of say down south, there's a whole kind of new set of people that you either be wrestling or getting along with, or just talking to backstage, or just getting through these connections and making new friends, and it's such a big community. Then it's just awesome to be a part of.
It's a great community. I always say the general public will kind of look down their nose at professional wrestling and professional wrestling fans. I started this show right around WrestleMania last year when it got canceled. Obviously, wrestling travel. We bring fans from around the world to like WrestleMania. You sign up with us from the UK. We do monthly payment plans. You got your flight, your hotel, your tickets for the whole week of WrestleMania, including WrestleMania, NXT, SmackDown, all that stuff is included. And where was I going with that? I went into a commercial all of a sudden, Joe. But WrestleMania got canceled, obviously, last year, unfortunately, due to the pandemic. We were sponsors of the WrestleMania pub crawl for Connor's Cure for pediatric cancer. So obviously everything got canceled. And though, if you remember right around this time last year, and who doesn't, it seems like forever ago, but it was only a year ago when we were like,
crazy,
we had no sports. It was like being in a room and somebody just shut the lights off. We're in a vacuum.
Yeah.
And we don't know what the hell is going on. We got no sports. Well, the founders of the pub crawl said, hey, we're going to do a virtual pub crawl on Twitch. I don't know what any of those words meant, but I said, I'll help out. And we raised $3,500, I think, for the Red Cross.
That's great,
man. But my point is, nobody comes together like the wrestling fans. Like $3,500, let's say around 2,000 pounds, may not sound like much, but when nobody knew what the hell was going on in the world, where the next dollar is coming from, wrestling fans and pro wrestling really, really come together. And then I started doing this.
So. Yeah, cool. No, especially because it doesn't matter like how much it was or where it came from. I mean, you've done that for an amazing trust, amazing company. You know, you've done that to help save someone's life. So, you know, what more can you do? And, you know, wrestling travel like themselves, as I say, it kind of came out of nowhere for us guys. And I say, before you knew it, I was wrestling Hacksaw Jim Duggan at a convention that Wrestle Travel had sorted. So I was like, you know, it's crazy. Oh, was it Love Wrestling? I think Wrestle Travel had something to do with it for sure.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was, Full of Wrestling. But then Wrestle Travel had something to do with it. So, you know, those guys coming together and kind of, you know, creating something that I got to wrestle someone, you know, like Hacksaw Jim Duggan, you know, I can't really complain about. But as I say, it's cool that you know, we can all still do little bits and bats for, you know, be it for, you know, small or large. And then eventually when everything comes back to normal, we can almost kind of all just go, right, let's go. So
my plan was, we're going to come through this whenever we see the end of the tunnel. We could have either sat on our asses this whole time, or at Wrestling Travel, we're just, you know, trying to be better. I'm lucky. Now we discussed off air. I will be the one to drop the news, so you don't have to say it. When I started training in wrestling, you told me you were 3 years old. Yeah. So I said, someday when you get old, you're going to look for something to do where you're not having to take some bumps in the ring. And I'm loving the role I have with Wrestling Travel. It's just being able to connect people and go, hey, I know this guy's a good guy. This guy's a good guy. There might be some work there for you guys to do. I can't wait until the pandemic is over, where I can get guys like you to wrestle over in the States, and the same, awesome. My friends going over to the UK, because that's the dream, just to be able to
100%.
go off the grid where you're from and go check out, especially the you know, the US wrestling scene. For somebody who hasn't been there, that's got to be like, hey, cool, man, I'm wrestling in an arena I've only seen on TV. Or when you get in the ring with the Hacksaw Jim Duggan, you know, that's huge. And I always say, we support wrestling from the top, which meaning the guys on TV. And I never say the bottom, I say the beginning. People that are starting, because I got to tell you, if you've only been to a SmackDown show, what's the difference now? Tell people, the fans, they can go watch SmackDown or AEW in a huge arena, and all the power to them. They can sit in the rafters. But what's it like going to a Future Shock event or an independent event? How awesome is that?
It's amazing. And I mean, for us especially, because you see the different communities of fans kind of, you know, be it from kind of bigger kind of sports halls or bigger kind of like, you know, big flashy arena, not necessarily arena, but kind of, you know, like the big kind of stage, kind of staging and lights and all stuff like that. Like, and then you've got like a labor club as well, where you can still have like 100 kids screaming and shouting and enjoying the show. You know, it's all still, you're still doing it for the same reason. But likes of like Future Shock, I say, I've not only have I wrestled Hacksaw Jim Duggan and got to wrestle all the guys that like wrestle for NXT UK, like, you know, like the guys I mentioned previously, as well as like, you know, like Zach Gibson, people like that. You know, I wrestled Hurricane there in my hometown of Stockport at the town hall, a place that I'd gone past on the bus to go to work for the past, you know, before, you know, when I first started work at 18. It was completely mind blowing, and it's like, how has this happened? You know, and there was about 400 or 500 people in that town hall, and I'm like, I remember coming here for school purposes and things like that, and now I'm wrestling one of my favorite wrestlers from when I was a kid, getting absolutely thrown down chokeslam and stuff. But as I say, it's something special. I feel like British wrestling is, be it, you know, from, like I said, the small kind of labor clubs to, you know, the bigger kind of venues that we get a chance to perform in. You know, it's almost that journey, because you say, like, for me, like before obviously everything stopped and everything, when I was getting out there a bit more, kind of, I was wrestling like, you know, a lot more on the regular, like say like 3-4 times a week. You go, well, I'm here Friday, I'm here Saturday, I'm here Sunday, you know, like, but these 3 places could be completely different. And, you know, I'm not saying you don't know what to expect regarding like fans or, you know, but they say each promotion's different and they offer something completely different. So as I say, if you've never been to a British independent show before, you got, no matter where you go, you got to go. Something special and something completely different every time. And you'll come out and be like, that was cool, man. That was cool. And plus, there's so much talent over here. Like, as I say, you know, I've been fortunate to wrestle guys, you know, that have been from Germany, or, you know, they've come over from Germany, from, you know, from New Zealand or Australia, guys that come over from the States. You know, I've got to connect with them, sometimes wrestle them, but, you know, people come over for a reason. And people come over and want to wrestle here for a reason. And, you know, this speaks for itself, I guess.
I was on mute there. Yeah, 100%. And I would say to the fan, I mean, fans are always a part of the show, and that's what we're missing on TV right now. But when you go to an indie show and there's maybe 100, 200 people there, you're part of the show. If I'm gonna boo Big Guns Joe is gonna hear me, you know.
Yeah,
and then
exactly. That's the good thing about it, because like the best thing about wrestling is, like, you know, obviously getting to perform in front of people, obviously getting to do something that, you know, you basically, no matter what, it's everyone's dream, whoever wanted to wrestle, you know, it's something that they always wanted to do. But, you know, you get to go and almost like forget about stuff. You know, you could go and lose yourself in this crazy world of professional wrestling for 2 hours, and, you know, then I've done my job, and then somebody as a fan has enjoyed it, and, you know, been able to just enjoy that time. There's nothing better than that, in my opinion.
And I, you know, even to this day, I'd love to pop down my money and just go sit and not do anything but just watch and enjoy. And it's almost as much fun to watch the fans and the kids that are just discovering that, you know, they get sometimes they can be a little rude over here, which I'm always like, hey, I hope the parents keep them in check. But just watching the kids, you know, decide who they like and who they don't like. And then
yeah, when you're getting hit with inflatable hammers on like holiday camp shows, you know, you're doing your job right as a bad guy.
Yeah. It's when they start kicking you in the shins that I'm like, hey, reel those kids in there. One of my favorite stories, I popped down to watch a show in Pennsylvania, and it was a brand new promotion, but they went under very soon after, because they brought in Honky Tonk Man, Demolition, Powers of Pain, Tito Santana, Coco Beware, Greg the Hammer Valentine, Jimmy Hart. Yeah, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, all these guys. And the only one that didn't show up that day was Brutus Beefcake, which I was like, yeah, I would have liked to seen him, but it's intermission and a brand new promotion, and there must have been 30 kids running around in the ring that you didn't notice until Jim the Anvil Neidhart had to get up, being the nice guy he is, he had to go yell at these kids for the promoter behalf, because they're like, some kid's gonna break their leg or something, and the promotion's gonna go under. But always funny. But I would say too, you go at intermission. That's a big thing too at independent wrestling. That's when I can go up and have a conversation, buy some merch, please. If you're going to go up and not bother, but talk to the wrestlers, please buy the merch, even if it's just a sticker or something cheap. Please support independent wrestling. And then I can get a chance to talk to you about wrestling. And that's, this day and age, that's kind of how people go, hey, how do I get into the business? My day, I'm a dinosaur, but there was no Facebook or anything I could just look up how to get in the wrestling business. You wanted it bad enough, you had to look for it. But
Yeah,
I always
heard
encourage
loads of
people
different about how people get in. Yeah, no, definitely, man. And I say it's always nice and it's so appreciated. Like, obviously, before when I first started, I didn't really sell merch that often, and I was like, should I do it? Should I do it? But everyone's so graceful and so nice, and you can tell they want to help. And I've been sat there before, and people have gone, oh, thank you so much for that. And it's like, no, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, but as I say, it's a great kind of little thing that you can do to, get to know people. Get to know that you're both appreciate. I can't say the word. Not appreciating each other for It's big good show. Don't say big words. That's why. But from different levels and different angles, because without the wrestlers, there's no show to put on. But without the fans, there's no show to put on either. So it's this constant kind of big circle of everyone needs each other with it, and it just also helps the whole experience of just having an amazing time. So.
I always compare, this is a dated comparison in the middle of the pandemic, but to go into a wrestling show is like going to the movie theater. A lot of people will complain about how much the popcorn and the soda cost at the movie theater, but the behind the scenes of the movie theater is they don't make money off the film. A lot of times when I remember Star Wars opens up, 90% of the ticket sales had to go back to whoever it is, Fox or Lucasfilm.
Oh wow!
For like your first couple of weeks, the whole deal of a movie theater is if we can get that movie to stretch out, have a 10-week run at the end, that's when we'll make more of our money off ticket sales. But if it wasn't for the overpriced popcorn and everything, that's kind of what's keeping them afloat. And I always say that with wrestling, a lot of times, we have to take a booking, especially early on, just to try to get on a show. We might be doing it for free, or the proverbial hot dog and a handshake, or and it's popular right now to be on Twitter and go, no, you shouldn't be working for free, know your worth, and this and that. Well, hey, I got to start somewhere. But that merch, and we didn't have merch back in my day, we didn't even think about it, but that merch is something to just kind of keep you afloat and get you some gas money or train money for back and forth. Let's talk about the pandemic. Now, I looked at my due diligence. I think I saw February 26th of last year, a Falls Count Anywhere match with you at Future Shock. I think it was dated February 26th. Was that one of your last matches before everything shut down? It had to be pretty close, right?
I think so. That was cool because that was like the end of a long storyline with me and somebody was getting another person, Deadly Damon Lee, who's helped with my training, helped with my parts of my career. He also worked for quite a few places in the Northwest scene that that I was starting up in as well. But yeah, it was that. I think TNT. I had a TNT show beforehand. There was quite a few. It was almost like that's why it was so kind of weird because it was like, oh, okay, cool, let's keep going, let's build this team, and it was almost like cut dead, and it was like, oh, okay, But that's what the whole with the whole pandemic was so kind of crazy because I remember speaking to people at TNT being like, oh, I believe there's something that's happening, oh, it should only be April, we'll be fine, and then a year later we're kind of like, soon please. But that show itself was really, really special to me because, as I say, it was one of those things with Future Shock where when I first started that, I started the Little Man Challenge because, being the biggest and henchest guy in British wrestling, you've got to try and take prove to people why you're the biggest, henchest guy, and you've got to take on people who may be a bit smaller than you. Obviously, I'm 1,678.4 millimeters tall, so everyone's smaller than me. But to cut a long story short, I kept coming up short for no pun there, and I'd get more and more frustrated, I eventually started teaming with a guy called Deadly Damon Lee, and he was always called Chicken there, which is another completely long story. But Big and Brave was the team name, and he eventually had enough of me, and it got to a point where the fans got behind me, and we rallied together, and I eventually got my first win at a Future Shock over a Deadly Damon Lee, and that was kind of like a year and a half in the process of doing that. So that was just kind of, obviously, go watch Future Shock on demand. It's such a great, there's so many little bits and bats between that and everything. But for me personally, it was like the growth of my character, because yes, I'm deluded that people, I'm bigger than everyone else. Yes, I might, be able to lift more than you in the gym, whatever. But really, in my head, people are aware that, oh, he's just, kind of not necessarily full of himself, but, he's just so kind of deluded. But it was almost like a charm that I have.
Right.
And then people got behind that. People like, no, he can win. No, oh, he's not won. No, he can win. Oh, no, he hasn't. And then there was so many different people that I'd end up facing, be it NXT UK stars, really big talent, like, huge kind of 400-pound wrestlers, an announcer that I was so cocky that I lost straight away due to like tripping over myself, things like that. But it was just such a cool journey for me. And, I learned so much from wrestling all these different people. But not only that, but having the time to do promos, having the time to, express my character, having the time to really kind of, experience all this kind of story, where instead of just coming in, wrestling and going, it was really kind of, building this story, and then to eventually, have it against my tag partner, having a Falls Count Anywhere match that lasted the whole show. We'd go back and forth, and, we'd go outside, we'd lose us for a bit. We'd come back out of nowhere from backstage. But having that kind of, I did it, but not only I did it, we all did it, because everyone, especially with Future Shock, having such a loyal fan base in the Northwest, they were all there for the whole journey, and it was really cool, man. To put long story short, it was such an awesome experience for me, and I feel like that's kind of helped me further my career. And when things like that happen, different storylines or different kind of situations occur in the future, I feel like I'll be more than ready for them, and just being able to experience them and just being like, no, this is cool, and appreciate it too.
And you touch on so many important things that I won't go into, but like psychology and storytelling.
100%.
When you can reel those fans in, and they're with that character or against it, but they're emotionally invested in that, and that's some of the stuff that now, 10 years down the road, you talk about going in and doing a match and leaving. People aren't going to remember these matches as much as they are going to remember, hey, remember Big Guns Joe, and it was then, and he finally got his win, and we were there. That's the thing. And that's for you being a relatively young guy, according to the dinosaur that I am. That's refreshing to hear. So so the pandemic happens now. It's a little bit different in the UK than it is in the States. So have you not been in a ring since? I
have, as I say, I've been able to, due to like it being kind of, I've kind of, I don't know why I'm stuttering here. It's weird. Anyway, sorry. No, I've had the opportunity to wrestle for Progress, which was a huge thing for me.
Okay, yeah.
Kind of, it's somewhere that you aspire to wrestle on the British scene, as you come up, and the opportunity came up for a few of us guys to do that, and it's been awesome, man. It's been so good. All the COVID regulations have been there. It's been really, really good. They've looked after us really well, and I get the chance to be on the WWE Network as well. So, it's been awesome.
That's huge. That's huge because I didn't know. Because I know over here, I'm in Wisconsin. We could run shows. We could run shows
Yep.
starting in June, but you go to like
Oh, wow.
New York State or Pennsylvania, and they still haven't been able to run shows.
It must be weird because, like, I was gonna say, like, I forgot to ask you at the start, like, how is it all over there? Because people shows are still running and they've been running quite consistently, but then you've got some people in some states, like you said, who have not been able to do it. But I say I would be one of the guys that we've been very fortunate to do it, but then it's almost like where do we go from here? It's almost a good starting point to be it within that promotion and also like wrestling in general. It's one of them where where do we take it from here? Let's take it to the next level. Let's keep going.
Right. And there's a lot of people that are on, like I call the good side of things, that are like, hey, we want to run shows, but we want to do them safe.
100%. And that's all been looked after, and we've been, as I say, like, all precautions were taken and things like that regarding like COVID and things like that. But it's been an awesome experience, and as I say, we are the lucky ones that got to do it, and it's put us in good stead for the future wrestling wise as well, because one, we've had a chance to do it, so I can't, all good this end from me. I'm just more happy to have got back in the ring and done what we love doing. So
yeah, it was probably almost a pinch me moment for you. Just like, holy crap! Not only are you back in the ring, but you're back in the ring with progress, and that's awesome. Yeah, I didn't realize. I didn't do my. Sometimes it's tough to get all my homework done before these interviews.
Nah, that's cool, man. That's cool. Don't worry about it.
Because I'm thinking, if you're stuck with, a lot of people are a year out, like I haven't gotten in the ring. A lot of people, it's almost that double-edged sword, because now people over here, like, hey, I've got the bug, I got to get back in. Well, now I've got to travel, which is that the best case scenario for a pandemic either. But it seems like, with the vaccines and stuff, that we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Who knows if that's a train coming our way or whatever, but hopefully it's that light, and we can kind of move on from it. So let's go to our rapid fire rounds. This is a regular feature of the show that I just made up in my head just now, being the journalist that I am. But a couple of the questions that I told you before we started recording, if you had to pick a Mount Rushmore of professional wrestling, 4 people to put on that. Now that's the shit part of the question, because for the 4 people that you're going to put on, you're going to leave out so many people
100%.
that are deserving. But just we'll give it the disclaimer. This is right off the top of Joe's head right this minute. So please don't be offended. And it could be anybody from any era. Who would you think you would put on there?
See, this is the thing now. Like, obviously, I'd put Chris Jericho on there because, one, he was one of my favorite wrestlers growing up, and he's constantly reinventing himself. Everyone talks about it all the time, but yeah, he'd definitely be on there. William Regal, because be it who he is and what he's done for wrestling, be it British and going over to the States and doing what he did with WWE. That's 2. See, I don't. That's what I mean. Now you kind of trying to think on top of your head. Now,
yeah, it's tough.
I'll do 2. I'll do 2 more of like my favorite wrestlers. Kind of. I think Rey Mysterio, because Rey Mysterio, being the smaller guy who I watched as a kid, I was like, oh, this guy's, completely changing the game here. He's, and then in 2006 when he won the Rumble and he won the title, it was like, if he can do it, if someone like is put so much into it, be it, people going, oh no, you're too small, you're doing this, and he's proved everyone wrong, as me being, how old was I at that point? 12, being like, oh, it gives me the kind of the thought process to be like, no, I can do this too, I can take what Ray's done here and I can do it. And as I say, like, I'm doing it right now, so be it, on a kind of on the level that we're doing it now compared to whatever, but as I say, it's proof in the pudding almost. And then one more. See, now this is like, oh, trying to think. But
yeah, and that's the thing. You got a million names in your head, but your brain never lets you just pull out that last one because
I'm gonna say Big Show just because I feel like he was the first name that I ever heard, and plus, we're both big guys.
right, huge.
Exactly, and I think we both could, understand what each other's thinking. But no, I feel like, as I say, he, for me at a young age as well, kind of solidified what wrestling was. Larger than life people, larger than life characters, and I'll probably, as soon as we end this now, I'll be like, oh, there's so many more people I wanted to think of, but
you'll be calling me back, going, wait, change it. Yeah.
Skip that bit part out. But no, I think those 4 people are very kind of like, say, for the business as a whole, definitely kind of so important, and without them, it wouldn't be what it is today. And also for me, growing up when I first started, watching wrestling and kind of getting into it more with people that was like, kind of life changing for me as well. So there we go. There's 4.
That's good. And I sometimes I frown on that question, but it's really neat to see, especially from a wrestler standpoint, like, hey, who got me into it? Like, Big Show's not a name that I usually hear, and that's super cool. That it's not the John Cena, The Rock, because
and again, they are people like Cena, of course, The Rock, Steve Austin, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Kurt Angle. I could keep going straight on now, but as I say, like, the SmackDown 6 that I mentioned before, definitely. But I think it's just little bits within my mind that kind of, that'll stay there forever. Be like, this is why this name's here for that reason. This is why that name's here for that reason. So it's cool, man. I'd like to see what everyone else thinks as well.
Yeah, I do too. That's one of the pleasures of doing the show, because I can really kind of, like I said, when people were, I think it was 2 people in a row, like, I didn't watch wrestling growing up, but I used to play it on PlayStation 2, and I'm like, really? I said, and then the first one I was like, oh, okay, this is weird, and the second one I'm like, wow. Now if I'm AEW or WWE listening to these shows, and I might put a little more emphasis on my video games, because it's an evolving business. We live in an evolving time. Hey, you never know when the next athletic kid's going to be playing a video game and going, hey, because it's one thing to play a video game and be a superhero. There's no magic capes that's going to make me fly. But now if I haven't watched wrestling, and now I'm playing a video game where I'm wrestling, and it's like, hey, this is tangible. This is achievable. That's cool. So rapid fire. We asked you the Mount Rushmore. Now here's this. You think that one sucks? I'm asking you the question that, and you give me a handful of names, and disclaimer, Big Joe is going to leave off a ton of deserving names because it's under pressure. But you mentioned getting in the ring with like Hurricane and Hacksaw. Can you give me a few names, knowing that it's not all the names, but a few names off the bucket list who, before it's all said and done, here's a couple of names that stand out that I'd like to get in the ring with. And they can be, legends, but they can also be, I understand the independent scene, like, hey, there's a guy down the road, man, I got to get in the ring with him. But you got a couple names that, before it's all said and done?
That's the thing. Like, I think it's more of a case of kind of, trying to just get amongst everyone, trying to, seeing what I could do with one person, or, what we could create, in different scenarios, things like that. A lot of the guys on the NXT UK roster, I'd love to, kind of get in the mix with, and also I think for me, it's exciting because, I may have wrestled these people a few years back, and then now it's like, oh, I've come on so far, they're doing what they're doing, making waves on the NXT UK brand, or NXT brand, whatever they're doing. I'd like to be like, see where things have changed and things have improved, or, kind of styles have changed, things like that. I don't know. You'll have to check out Progress and see what happens. See what happens with me, who I end up facing, or, what things happen in the future. I'm not going to give away too much. As I say, being kind of a mainstay in the Northwest scene, I'd like to get over to like Ireland a lot more and wrestle kind of guys, for example, like More Than Hype, LJ Cleary, Nathan Martin, Dan Kearney, those 3 guys. Michael May, that's another guy over there who are amazing, who I got to kind of dabble bits and bats with over the past few, before the pandemic. So when things come back and they can come back over, or I can go back over there, things like that. I'd like to go over to Germany at some point. Wrestle, see, you know, just different areas. You know, I can't put my name, put my, you know, I can't really think of specific names right now because I'd be like, oh, this, like you said.
Yeah.
I know it's kind of a broad answer.
Yeah, you don't want to put yourself in a little box here, and I understand. So it's actually a really good answer. It's like, hey, there's a couple names that I'm sure that you wouldn't mind being in the ring with, but let's perfect the craft. Let's get in the ring and put on a good match every time I go out there. That psychology and stuff. So, 2 more questions for you.
Sure.
Who's gonna win? Big Guns Joe versus the Big Show, both in your prime. What would happen? Would that ring? Would there be a ring large enough to hold?
I don't think so. I think that's just too much weight. You know, too much muscle mass, to be honest. But you know, you saw what happened with when he wrestled Lesnar, and then you saw what happened when he wrestled Mark Henry. You know, Braun Strowman. These things happen, but you know, he's never wrestled Big Guns Joe. I'm 76,521 grams. That's a lot of weight, man. So you know, who knows what would happen? I think you know, you got to make sure you wrestle on the ground floor, because if it wasn't, then you just keep going down and down and down.
That's right. That wouldn't be safe for any fans in attendance.
No, 100%.
So, respectful of your time, my final question is my favorite question to ask. And hopefully it's always my guest's favorite question to answer. So hopefully the fans that have watched this from around the world are finally going, hey, you know, who's this guy? Get to know you a little bit. That's what we like to do here. But how do they follow you? What are your social medias handles? Where are you at? How can a fan follow you? Do you have merch? Where can we get merch? And hopefully we're just looking out for the next time you come to our local town, we can check you out.
Awesome, man. No, thank you for that. Merch wise, you know, you've plugged the Wrestling Merch Central. I think there's a few bits with like TNT collaborations that we've done that are still ongoing. So feel free to check that out. Personally, other merch wise, you know, when everything comes back to normal, things will be kicked up a notch. I've got a few things in the pipelines. I know that's like a very cliche, like, oh, of course he has, but no, legitimately, you know, there's a few different things that I'm going to put in place that hopefully that fans will enjoy. And when it comes to like Twitter, at Benchmark Big Joe, Instagram at Big Guns Joe, you know, come and call me a dweeb on my comments, and I'll, you know, tell you how big I am, and that was, she shouldn't have said that, and all, you know, all this kind of good stuff. But as I say, you know, like, all support's awesome, man, and it's really cool to interact with fans, you know, be, you know, on these different platforms and things like that. But regarding like email and stuff as well, benchmarkbigjoe@gmail.com. If you need, you know, any inquiries there, feel free to drop me a message on that too. But as I say, just, you know, it's awesome, especially during this time, man. Like the whole kind of Twitter, Facebook, Instagram kind of thing, you know, it's been so crucial for a lot of us guys and girls. So not only to keep interacting with fans, or, you know, kind of, you know, just keeping on going. It's been great to keep the community going as well. So, but anyway, man, I appreciate you having me on, man, and it's been cool to chat to you, man. Thanks for getting up a bit early, because obviously the time difference and stuff.
No, we're good here. We started at noon here, so there was no problem there. Yeah. So we're good. Now the time, I think you guys change your time coming up now, so I'll be back to. I think I'll be back to 6 hours behind you. But no, the pleasure's all mine. And I guess my final question really is, I'm going to make a statement and just hold you to it, that as we come back to wrestling and wrestling gets back, hopefully we can connect back up in about 6 months and check on where you're at and how things are going.
That'd be cool, man. That'd be so cool, yeah.
So, Big Guns Joe, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Nobody measures up to Big Guns Joe, remember that. But yeah, no, thanks, Justin, man. I really appreciate you having me on.